Hello everybody and welcome to the channel where it's my goal to grow the light novel community as well as to help existing fans of light novels find brand new series to love. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the 14th volume in Nisioisin's Monogatari series, and that one is Tsukimonogatari. This one released officially in English by Vertical. It has an English translation by Daniel Joseph, and it has artwork by Tho Fan. If you'd like to pick up your own copy of this one, I do have links to Amazon and the book depository in the description down below. Now right off the bat, let's be fair. Koi Monogatari, the one that was out just before this book, is probably one of my favorite volumes in the Monogatari series. Certainly top 3, easily. So this volume was always going to have a lot to live up to. It was pretty much going to have an upward hill battle to make me enjoy it. And in some ways it accomplished that, and in other ways, well, not as much. It's notable because this is another beginning. It's a brand new chapter in the Monogatari series, or as they typically call them, seasons. This one supposedly is the final season of the Monogatari series. As I understand it, I believe the volumes following this one are, a number of them are just kind of like side stories and stuff like that, but I do believe that in Japan there is currently a brand new season going on with these books. If I'm wrong, feel free to correct me in the description down below or in the comments down below. In any case, this one has Koyomi Araragi returning to be the narrator, which, if you've been following this series, which I don't know why you're watching this video otherwise, but if you've been following this series, you pretty much know that that means that at least the first third of this book is going to be filled with inane banter, some pretty inappropriate comments about sisters and such, and is gonna feel pretty pointless until you get to this sudden moment where it's like, oh, by the way, this is what this volume is about. And this one absolutely delivers on that. This one has a rather lengthy discussion about alarm clocks, and then it has Koyomi and his youngest sister Tsukihi sharing a bath with each other because neither one of them is they're too stubborn to allow the other one to enjoy the freshly drawn bath first. Yeah, filled with all sorts of innuendo and back and forth, as, you know, Monogatari is prone to do. However, we then get to the actual setup of what this book is about, and that is that Koyomi realizes that he has no reflection. Kind of an odd thing. Not so odd because, you know, he does become vampiric when he allows Shinobu to drink his blood, but he's not done that recently. So why is he kinda having vampiric attributes? When Shinobu turns out to be no assistance, he decides to seek out the only two experts that are still in town, and that being Yozuru Kagenui and her Shikigami partner, Yotsuki Ononoki. So Araragi teams up with them to try and figure out exactly why he seems to be becoming a vampire. Now, generally speaking, I really like the Monogatari series, and I am generally pretty good, even with the ridiculous, inane banter segments of it all, because it's usually pretty enjoyable, because I enjoy the characters. I did find this one maybe a little bit harder to get through, and I don't... And no, it's not just because it's him having a bath with his younger sister, which is a little creepy, but I think it's because after Koi Monogatari was filled with plot-centric stuff, but still managed to have that kind of banter and conversations and absurdity and stuff with it, it kind of felt like this one was a bit of a step backwards. Now, I personally think that that's because all of Araragi's volumes have been like this, so I'm thinking that it's sort of Nisioisin going back to form because of who the narrator is. And really, like, if you go through the Monogatari series, that is how things are. Whenever there's a different narrator than Araragi, we don't usually end up with a third of the book being just kind of like throwaway philosophizing and inappropriate behavior. However, that said, once we got to that point where it's like, okay, this is the setup. So, you know, we've got Araragi. Seems to be having vampiric attributes, even though he has not let Shinobu drink his blood recently. Why is that? We find out that there's kind of a rogue specialist in town, one who pretty much is more into the execution side of things as opposed to the just a, you know, let's find out what's going on or help you out or extort you for money kind of way that a number of the other experts have been. We also have this whole starting, I mean, it's not starting because this is something that's been going on now for a while, is this whole discussion of, is there somebody behind the scenes that's kind of manipulating things? And we all really know who it is, and there's no big surprise to it. But it was kind of nice to have the book really come out and just kind of say it, you know? In fact, it's actually, at one point, Yotsuki is kind of just as like, hey, have you ever thought that maybe so-and-so is the one that's behind all this and manipulating everything? Because makes sense to me. And so it was kind of nice and even a little refreshing not to have that teased anymore, to just kind of finally have it out in the open, even though it's debatable whether Araragi quite realizes how out in the open it is. And it's kind of neat because it does give this series something that it really hasn't had, which is an actual antagonist. You know, there's very much like each volume has been very sort of self-contained and everything else, but now with this sort of confirmation, as I said, lots of suspicion the past couple of volumes, but with this confirmation, we kind of go back to all the way at the beginning of the last season, and you see that there's been this kind of presence, this manipulation, this altering of events and everything else to try and get to an end goal that we're really not sure what it is and what it's supposed to be. Again, there's suspicions, and there's certainly, I have some thoughts on it, but we haven't gotten to that final end game yet. And I really liked that this one is, again, kind of pushing the envelope a little bit with this series and playing with it a little bit and, you know, kind of bringing back ideas and themes and everything else that haven't really been fully addressed. That, like I said, we have all known and suspected for many volumes, but, you know, it's kind of nice to have it out in the open. The other thing that I really like about this one is Yotsuki, the character of Yotsuki Ononoki, who is, well, she's just a lot of fun, honestly. Her deadpan sort of delivery of things, her trademark, yay! There was some really cool moments with her as a character, not just with her interactions with Araragi himself, but the way that this book ends. Wow. And I don't mean the very, very end, which kind of leads us into whatever's going to happen next. I just mean kind of like the climax of the book. It was really kind of dark, but it was very cool, this sort of, you know, shining a light on the difference between being human and being an aberration. And really hit home why it is that Araragi really should focus on not being an aberration, on why he should focus on saving his humanity. This volume's also very much just playing up with that whole, it's been a theme that's been ongoing for this series, particularly through season 2, which is the whole sort of paying the price. So kind of having to finally accept that your actions have consequences and having to accept those consequences. It is kind of nice to see in this volume Araragi kind of growing up a little bit more. I mean, we can definitely see some character development over the course of this series, but I would say that it is in this volume where Araragi's humanity is suddenly really on the line, and the chance of him having the future that he has envisioned with Sanjukahara and, you know, all of his friends and family and everything else, it is at this point where he's finally really kind of having to grow up and say, okay, well, this is the person I am, and having to understand the ramifications of what he's done and how he has kind of cheated his way through a lot of situations and relied heavily on the strength of others to lift him up to accomplish things. So it was kind of cool to see this character have a little bit more of a maturation in this volume. I still think we're going to be, you know, inundated with the whole siscon, lolicon, yada 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 stuff that we're used to with Araragi. I don't think that's all just going to go away, but I do kind of feel like the character made some progress in this one, and as I said, this one probably more so than the other seasons before it really does seem to be setting up a overall arc. I mean, definitely season 2 had a little bit more of that arc than I would have said existed in season 1, but this one, it really does. It does feel like this one has much more of a clear-cut narrative that's going to travel through the season. I don't honestly know if that's true because, like, I haven't read any of the other books in the season yet, but that's what it feels like. It feels more like it's setting groundwork for a very specific type of thing, as opposed to other seasons where it didn't always feel that way, particularly like right at the start. So, Tsukimonogatari, another good volume in the Monogatari series. I would not say quite as strong as Koi, which was the last volume, and particularly, like I said, it made it a little harder for me to get through that first third bit, but man, when it hit the ground running, I actually really did enjoy this volume, found myself very drawn into it, and really looking forward to what Monogatari has in store for us for this third and quote-unquote final season. In this video, I want to say a special thanks to Yun, Kyle Block, Renzaz, Drome205, and Michaela Werner for their support on Patreon, as well as the support of all of my patrons who help to keep this channel running, as well as helping the Light Novel Podcast be on as many platforms as possible. For my next review, I am going to be talking about the book Voices of a Distant Star, Words of Love Across the Stars. This one, the novelization of the Makoto Shinkai anime film, that was actually the very first film that he created over a course of 3 years all by himself. It's what sort of shot him to prominence. So I'm going to be checking this one out in my next review video. But until then, thank you so much for joining me in this video. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Till then, bye-bye for now.